So here we are, Carmine, with the scandal of the decade with George, or scandal of how is there ever much scandal with George? This is as closest as we get to a big scandal.
It's been a wild 12 hours because holy fuck, first we have to address this because you said on stream that you didn't think that George was actually going to call anybody out. He was just going to be
And
very polite about
yeah, no,
it.
I was straight up wrong. I was straight up wrong, and I think the reason why I thought George wouldn't do that has become quite apparent on why he shouldn't have done it, and what happens when
Hmm.
people in contracts who have big multi-million dollar deals go. And that's the thing, is not even like a lot rogue, just a tad rogue. Like, okay, so for people that don't know what we're talking about, George has been promising a series of blog posts about his criticisms of House of the Dragon season 2.
Hmm.
We will likely never see any more, because he posted the first of the series on the first 2 episodes of of House of the Dragon, which are probably some of the better episodes of the season. And his criticisms were, I would say, minor, really weird, specific things that, like, the rest of us did, like, we noticed, we cared about mildly, but it wasn't that big of a deal for us. But to George, he sees things differently. He made a big deal out of them, but they're so minor and small, and his criticisms were so minor and small. And so when it came out, I was like, oh, I can't believe he actually, like, not only criticized the show, but he actually called out Ryan Condal. Like, he actually said, I had specific meetings with Ryan Condal. And, and that's when, like, Carmine and I talked earlier today when the post was up. Because the thing is, the post was up for what, half an hour?
About that, yeah, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden the entire website goes out.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't just the post got deleted itself. The website went out, and then the post was deleted, and
Yeah.
then the website comes back and it's gone.
So Carmine calls me, and he's like, and I was like, yeah, it's kind of a big deal, because and Carmine's like, why? What he's saying isn't even that bad. I was like, it's just unprofessional to air, like, minor petty grievances between people publicly. Like, you just don't do that in a work environment. But I think perhaps George got in trouble in a legal environment of what he was supposed to be doing or whatever. But nonetheless, he posted this post. 30 minutes later, he removed the post, and then HBO then responded, there are few greater
We
fans
should
of,
probably
yeah.
we should probably wait till the very end to check
Okay,
out HBO's response, but let's go into this
let's go
first.
into this. This post was up 30 minutes, and then George took it down. And this is the first of a series of criticisms of season 2, and those criticisms will go unfinished, much like many other things in George R. R. Martin's life. But the criticisms of we will not see any more criticisms of season 2. He went further than I thought. I was very surprised, and a bit of it is, George not understanding, I think, what is appropriate, or, like, I don't know. Well, anyway, we'll get into this. It's it's subtle, but it's also very shocking, and the reaction is even more shocking, because had he left it up and had HBO said nothing, we probably all would have forgotten about it. But now it's a fucking scandal, right? You agree with me, Carmine?
There's no way you're going to be able to forget about this because if this was maybe 10 years ago, yeah. But now, remember, everyone is trying to make their bones on the internet, whether it's a
Right.
YouTuber,
But this
influencer, but the
this
new
is going to be
thing,
like Entertainment Weekly is going to, like, run a story about this deleted. Like, they're going to run a story
well,
probably about
that's
this
the
deleted
thing
thing.
because nowadays you have these Twitter accounts run by just random people that have more followers than Entertainment Weekly, whether
Right.
it's Culture
It's going to
Crave or Discussing
trend.
Film.
George R. R. Martin
Yeah,
criticizing House of the Dragons is going to trend. All the scandal
it's
chasers. They
already
made a
did it. Yeah.
scandal. Yeah, they made a scandal that didn't need to be a scandal. Anyway, George names this blog post "Beware the Butterflies," and you'll see that it's, to many of you, you're going to be like, "What's the big deal?" But we'll get into this. Back in July, I promised you some further thoughts about Blood and Cheese and Maelor the Missing, after my commentary on the first 2 episodes of House of the Dragon Season 2, A Son for a Son and Rhaenyra the Cruel. Those were terrific episodes. He's being positive here. Well written, well directed, powerfully acted. This is the thing, is I really thought he was just going to focus on HBO. So far, so good. A great way to kick off the new season. Fans and critics alike seem to agree. There was only one aspect of the episode that drew significant criticisms: the handling of Blood and Cheese and the death of Prince Jaehaerys. From the commentary I saw online, opinion was split there. The readers of Fire and Blood found the sequence underwhelming, a disappointment, watered down from what they were expecting. Viewers who had not read the book had no such problems. Most of them found the sequence a real gut punch, tragic, horrifying, nightmarish, etc. Some reported being reduced to tears. All this is true. Though going forward, I think George's criticisms of the scene are very different from mine. But I found myself agreeing with both sides. In my book, Aegon and Helaena have 3 children, not 2. The twins, Jaehaerys and Jaehaera, are 6 years old. They have a younger brother, Maelor, who is 2. When Blood and Cheese break in on Helaena and the kids, they tell her they are debt collectors come to exact revenge for the death of Prince Lucerys, a son for a son. As Helaena has 2 sons, however, they demand that she choose which one should die. She resists and offers her own life instead, but the killers insist it has to be a son. If she does not name one, they will kill all 3 of her children. To save the life of the twins, Helaena names Maelor. But Blood kills the older boy Jaehaerys instead, while Cheese tells little Maelor that his mother wanted him dead. Whether the boy is old enough to understand this is not at all certain. This is actually one of the things I have a problem with George on. If Maelor is a 2-year-old, no, he doesn't know what's going on. Like, what is wrong with you thinking that he would know what's going on? He's 2. Okay.
This is George not having kids. Not knowing.
Ridiculous. And would never, and even if he did know, he would forget in 6 months because kids forget things. It's so, like, you know, I asked my 5-year-old, like, oh, do you remember at your 4th birthday party? And he's like, no, you know, George. Yeah. So meaning the cruelty of Cheese there, telling Maelor that his mother wants him dead is ridiculous, but this is a mistake on George. And there's mistakes coming in here. George says some things in here that where I'm just like, wow, George, you kind of don't know your own work here. But anyway, that's not how it happens in this show. There is no Maelor in House of the Dragon, only the twins, both of whom look younger than 6, but I'm no sure judge of children's age, so I can't be sure how old they're supposed to be. Blood can't seem to tell the twins apart, so Helaena is asked to reveal which is the boy. You would think a glance up the PJs would reveal that without involving the mother. That's a pretty good joke, but yeah, they could have just grabbed for the kids, you know, dick. It would have been, you know, like, it was a little silly for them to be like, which one is which? But they didn't really put that much time into it, so it's not that bad of a scene, because they're just like, which one's which? It's not like they're sitting there for like 15 minutes being like, I can't figure it out. Have the woman tell us. They just ask her. I mean, it wasn't that big of a deal.
Right.
Instead of offering her own life to save the kids, Helaena offers them a necklace. Blood and Cheese are not tempted. Blood saws Prince Jaehaerys' head off. We are spared the sight of that. A sound effect suffices. In the book, he lops the head off with a sword. It's bloody, brutal scene, no doubt. How not? An innocent child is being butchered in front of his mother. I still believe the scene in the book is stronger. And this is where I kind of like, this is where George doesn't quite get it here. The readers have the right of that. The 2 killers are crueler in the book. I thought the actors who played the killers on the show were excellent, but the characters are crueler, harder, and more frightening in Fire and Blood. Well, that's true. They're just doofuses. And it's not just that the characters are doofuses. It follows them, and they go on these weird, irrelevant fake-out scares, like as if they're the centers of the horror movie. Like, there's jump scares for them. Like it's
the
just
Billie Eilish made.
Yeah, Like the Billie Eilish maid just showing up, and you're supposed to be like, am I supposed to be fearing for their lives? Like, it was very weird. And like, anyway, that's the thing he doesn't mention, that I'm just like, that's what most people, like most of my fans were like, oh yes, I totally agree. When you guys called them the wet bandits, we were like, yes, that was the problem with them. They were the wet bandits. Anyway, in the show, Blood is a gold cloak. In the book, he's a former gold cloak stripped of his office for beating women to death. Irrelevant. Book Blood is sort of a man who might think of making a woman choose between her sons. Who might think making a woman choose between her sons should die is amusing, especially when they double down on the wanton cruelty by murdering the boy she tries to save. I mean, the guys in the books are cruel. They're just inconsistent. Like one moment they're like wimps and sympathetic, and then in another moment they're absolutely cruel monsters. And so that was another problem, is that they were just inconsistent characters, changing personality from scene to scene. Book Cheese is worse too. He does not kick a dog, true, but he does not have a dog, and he's the one who tells Maelor that his mom wants him dead. Well, here he says wants him head. Again, telling Maelor that his mom wants him dead is stupid. It's a really stupid part of the scene, George. I'm sorry. I would also suggest that Helena shows more courage, more strength in the book by offering her own life to save her son. Offering a piece of jewelry is just not the same. Kind of irrelevant point to it all, but I mean, we're sitting. Helena goes through something incredibly brutal. Showing her courage at that moment is something I think most of us forgot. As I saw it, the Sophie's Choice aspect was the strongest part of the sequence, the darkest, the most visceral. I hated to lose that. And judging from the comments online, most fans seem to agree. Now, she still does a Sophie's Choice. In fact, she does a more literal Sophie's Choice, because in the show, she's choosing between a girl and a boy, while in the book, she's choosing between two boys, the older and the younger. In fact, in the books, she's choosing the child that she spent less time with. So of course you would choose the younger child over the older child. I don't know. Like, I mean, it's a really hard thought to think about, like which child are you going to choose? But like, you know, when they're twins, it's actually a harder thing. Now you're choosing just because of gender. While in the show, you know, with older versus younger, you know, like one you've spent 2 years with, the other you've spent 4 years with, you know. I mean,
I have more to say on this later on,
yeah.
because Helena is such a different character from in the books. So,
oh yeah, absolutely too.
He touches on that too.
Yeah. Now, anyway, as I said, he's fixating on these things that I don't think were really the true reason for the scene not working in the show. I think the scene didn't work on the show because it follows around Blood and Cheese as the protagonists, which takes away the illusion of them being monsters. You know, dark,
or
evil,
hardened killers, or hardened killers who know what they're doing. Imagine, I don't know if you remember. I think I was with Trey instead of you, because I think you were out. But I likened it to, imagine if you had to go rewatch The Red Wedding, and on the first view, you watch the phrase plan out
the wedding
detail, and like they're bickering over what song to play. No, we should play this song. No, how about this song? It ruins how like vicious and lethal the whole thing was.
Right. Absolutely, you're absolutely right. That's it. That's a great analogy. Like they say what's coming, like they tell you what's coming, then you follow these characters who are a bunch of like doofuses, and then they do what they say they're gonna do. There's no surprise. There's no we should be taking it from the perspective of Helena. She's the one that should be surprised and shocked and dealing with this horror. And instead we're following Blood and Cheese, that's the thing that ruined the scene. The fact that it's this incredibly long sequence from their point of view where they're doofuses, where there's no surprise. George seems to be obsessed with the idea that like the real problem was that she had to choose between a boy and a girl versus an older son and a younger son. Like, no, that wasn't it at all. Like, or that like this like zinger that Cheese like gave was so brutal. No, it wasn't. You know, like, anyway. This is where it gets really kind of interesting, because he gets personal, and this is probably why he took it down. When Ryan Condal first told me what he meant to do ages ago, back in 22 might be, I argued against it for all these reasons. He didn't give very good reasons. I mean, honestly, I did not argue long or with much heat, however. The change weakened the sequence, I felt, but only a bit. And Ryan had what seemed to be a practical reason for it. They did not want to deal with casting another child, especially a 2-year-old toddler. Ryan Condal gave a stupid reason. It does not take very much to just make Maelor like 6 months, and then he being like a swaddled baby, or like 3 months or 4 months, and him being like a baby, like a doll carried by a handmaid. Like, it doesn't take very much.
So this is something that, again, we covered very early on. You weren't there for that. I was with Trey, and I have a whole video on it. And I remember the video specifically because it got copyright claimed. Actually, didn't get copyright claimed. It got ineligible for monetization because of the graphic nature in which we discuss.
Oh, God.
But Ryan Condal basically said how legally they don't think they could do that, like the subject matter involving like such a young child and all the logistics behind it and just,
I agree with you. I agree with you that it was like, I don't think the choice between Jaehaera and Jaehaerys versus Jaehaerys and Maelor was that significant, but he cuts Maelor completely, which later George talks about the butterfly effect, and like they could easily still have had Maelor in the show as a baby in another room. That was not part of the choice. But for some reason, Ryan Condal's like, let's just cut the baby completely, like cut the child completely. I mean, I get like making the choice. Like, I don't like. I agree with Ryan Condal here. The choice between Jaehaera and Jaehaerys makes sense. Like, and I don't think it lessens the scene very much. But the elimination of Maelor, doesn't need to happen.
No, I understand that, but this is something either George didn't know about because maybe Ryan didn't tell him, or George left it out. Do you mind if I quote Ryan here?
Sure.
It was not really possible, given the age of those characters, to play realistically what's in the book, he said. I mean, there are things that you can actually not do with children on set, and rightfully so, sort of from a decency standpoint, and also from a legal standpoint. What children are allowed to see and do on set would have made shooting it very difficult. So
So kids that young will inevitably slow down production, and there would be budget implications. Fine. Budget was already an issue with House of the Dragon. It made sense to save money wherever we could. Moreover, Ryan assured me that we were not losing Prince Maelor, simply postponing him. Queen Helena could still give birth to him in Season 3, presumably after getting with child late in Season 2. Or she could have just had a baby in another room. I mean, it would have been fine. It made sense to me. I withdrew my objections and acquiesced to the change. Okay. Kind of minor, the whole thing. I still love the episode and the blood cheese sequence overall. Losing Helena's choice did weaken the scene, but not to any great degree. Okay? I agree.
You know what? Before you move on, what he just said here, that's incredibly fair. That is very, very fair. Because at the end of the day, the blood and cheese scene was supposed to give us a brutal start to the Civil War. This is where like both sides are like, you know what? That's it. Let's get into this. This is it. Gauntlet's thrown. Let's get it down. And let's also be reminded that, unfortunately, we book fans are not the majority of the viewers. Casuals are. Casuals, they were pretty horrified, so the job was done. There it is.
Yeah. Losing Helena's choice did weaken the scene, but not to any great degree. Only book fans would have even noticed its absence. Viewers who had never read Fire and Blood would still find the scene heart-rending. Maelor did not actually do anything in the scene after all. How could he? He was only 2 years old. All this is true. I think George missed the point. The scene is weak for none of the reasons he listed, but so George is hyper fixating and on something that, I mean, he kind of even says is irrelevant, which is odd. It's odd to go paragraphs and paragraphs on something that he thought was irrelevant then and says again is irrelevant here. or to not any great degree, or it's, I don't know if it's like, your significant other being like, it's fine, when it's not fine, I don't know if
You
it's
know what?
that.
I didn't realize until you just said that, but I really think that's what he's doing. It's fine,
It's
whatever.
fine,
But before
fine.
you move on, by the way, like there are so many people, and I said this in my video, there are so many people trying to claim this is victory. But George says it right there, his own words. I still love the episode, and this
Yeah,
is something I said in my review. The blood and cheese stuff aside, it was a really
it
good
was a really good
episode.
episode. That first episode, outside of the blood and cheese, I remember that review back then. Like, we kind of all said that the blood and cheese, like, we could say the blood and cheese ruined it, but the rest of the episode was near flawless, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But blood, yeah. There's another aspect to the removal of this young princeling. However, this is kind of funny. For those who hate spoilers, should stop reading here. Spoilers will follow, at least for the readers among you. If you have never read Fire and Blood, maybe it does not matter, because all am I going to spoil here are things that happen in the book that may never happen in the series, starting with Maelor himself.
That is a lie.
Yes, that's true. Sometime between the initial decision to remove Maelor, a big change was made. The prince's birth was no longer going to be pushed back to season 3. He was never going to be born at all. The younger son of Aegon and Helena would never appear. And I think it's for the reasons you listed, the legal implications.
Mm-hmm.
Because most of you know about the butterfly effect, I assume. Yes, there's that movie a few years back. It's a familiar concept in chaos theory as well, but the most science fiction fans were first to expose to the idea in Ray Bradbury's classic time travel story, The Sound of Thunder, where time
Let me push
travel...
back on that
Yeah.
real quick. I don't think most fans were exposed to the butterfly effect from that. I think most people were exposed to it from that one Simpsons episode where Homer goes back in time because of the toaster. Have you ever seen that one? The
Yeah,
Halloween
I mean,
special?
that's a redo of the Ray Bradbury story.
I know, but I think a
Yeah.
lot of people didn't know about the Ray Bradbury story. They probably just knew it from the
Yes.
Simpsons episode.
The Ray Bradbury story is you could go back in time and kill a dinosaur that was already going to die, like by a tree falling on him. And so, but they're like, you got to stay on the path and not get off the path. And the guy gets off the path and he kills a dinosaur and he kills a butterfly. And then he comes back to the future and different president is president. When the time travel in the present panics and crushes a butterfly while hunting a T-Rex. When he returns to his own time, he discovers the world has changed in huge and frightening ways. One dead butterfly has rewritten history. The lesson can being that change begets change, and even small and seemingly insignificant alterations to a timeline or a story can have a profound effect on all that follows. Maelor is a 2-year-old toddler in Fire and Blood, but like on Butterfly, he has an impact on the story all out of proportion to his size. The reader among you may recall that when it appears that Rhaenyra and her blacks are about to capture King's Landing, spoiler, yeah, Queen Alicent becomes concerned for the safety of Helena's remaining children and takes steps to have them smuggled out of the city. The task is given to 2 knights of the Kingsguard. Sir Willis Fell is commanded to deliver Princess Jaehaera to the Baratheons at Storm's End, while Maelor is given to Rickard Thorne to be escorted across the Mander to the protection of the Hightower army on its way to King's Landing. Willis Fell delivers Jaehaera safely to the Baratheons at Storm's End, but Rickard fares less well. He and Maelor get as far as Bridge, where it's revealed as a Kingsguard in a tavern called the Hog's Head. As a Kingsguard in a tavern called the Hog's Head. Once discovered, Sir Rickard fights bravely to protect his young charge and bring him to safety, but he does not make it across the bridge before some crossbows bring him down. Prince Maelor is torn from his arms and then sadly ripped to pieces by the mob, fighting over the boy and the huge reward that Rhaenyra has offered for his capture and return. Will any of this appear on the show? Maybe, but I don't see how. Again, legal implications here.
Well, hold on. Before you move on, they can
Yeah.
still do that. This is something I said in my video. They can still do that with Jaehaera, have Rickard Thorne and I guess Willis Fell accompany them, and then as they're trying to get to the Hightower army, people spot them. Rickard defends both of them, trying to get to help them get away, and in the process, he gets brutally murdered. They can still do this with Jaehaera, and no, I'm not.
Well,
trying to run
Jaehaera's not going to
defense.
get torn apart. I mean,
Of course, no, no, no. Of course, she's gonna
Jaehaera has to
survive.
marry Aegon the Third. Yeah.
100%. She's going to survive, but they could still do this whole thing, just switch it up, and obviously
Yeah.
she has to survive. I'm not trying to run defense for Ryan Condal here, but it can still go down.
Sure. Could maybe make Maelor a newborn instead of a 2-year-old, but that'll scramble up the timeline, which is a bit mess. Here we go, which is a bit of a mess already. He's beginning to get off script. I have no idea what. This is probably the worst line he has in the whole thing. I have no idea what Ryan has planned, if indeed he has planned anything.
I don't know. I think I didn't touch on this in my video, but I think people relied on that. I think he's probably. I think he wasn't being as douchey about it as people intended. Because that does sound like an asshole thing to say, but
it is. It's also the nature of M dashes. Like M dashes do like create this like physical what's that in the middle of the paragraph kind of highlight, which they don't necessarily mean to do. But had he parenthesized it, it would have been smaller.
Well, it says here, like you're under the impression George is basically saying if he's planned anything about the show at all.
I know, right?
I don't think that's what he meant.
Yeah, probably not. Probably not. You're right. I mean, he's trying to be nice. But given Maelor's absence from episode 2, the simplest way to proceed is to just drop him entirely, lose the bit where Alicent tries to send the kids to safety, drop Rickard Thorne, and send him with Willis Fell so Jaehaera has 2 guards. From what I know, that seems to be what Ryan is doing here. It's simplest yet, and may make sense in terms of budget and shooting schedules, but simpler is not better. Woof. The Bitter Bridge scene has tension, suspense, action, bloodshed, a bit of heroism, and a lot of tragedy. Rickard Thorne is a tertiary character at best. Most viewers, as opposed to readers, will never know he is gone, since they never knew him at all. But I rather liked giving him a brief moment of heroism, a taste of courage and loyalty of the Kingsguard, regardless of whether they are black or green. The butterflies are not done with us yet, however. This is what's weird. Okay. So this is where George kind of doesn't know his own work here. Okay. So in the book, when word of Prince Maelor's death and the grisly manner of his passing reaches the Red Keep, that proves to be the thing that drives Queen Helena to suicide. First of all, like Helena, like Maelor's death happens like a good 35 pages before Helena's suicide. And there's like multiple battles and like a time passing event, Maiden's Day, and the battle over the God's Eye. Like all happen in that time. So, and then when Helena dies, there's immediate talk of her being murdered. And like, that's the topic. It's really hard to believe that any reader would believe that Maelor's death triggered the suicide. Certainly, it would further contribute to Helena's insanity and contribute to her eventual suicide. Absolutely. But he says here, it proves to be the thing that drives Queen Helena to suicide. As if like that's the thing at that moment, the news reaching the Red Keep drives Queen Helena to suicide. Unless I've missed something, which I don't think I have, like these events are pretty far apart in the text. So George is kind of making shit up or misremembering himself. It's weird. I mean, I don't expect you to kind of know what I'm talking about here, Carmen, because it's really fucking specific. But I can bring up Fire and Blood if you want, if you think this is worth pursuing.
I mean, doesn't George contradict himself all the time? Specifically, even in his own Here Be Dragons post.
He does, and
he also contradicts himself in this. But I know what you're talking about, and how it's the timeline is not there.
And this is also the weird thing is that he says, knowing she chose him to die in the Sophie's Choice scene, and now he is dead in truth, her words have come true. Except Alicent's the one that sends him off, not her. So again, like it's George doesn't know like George is just off on this paragraph. Grief and guilt are too much for her to bear. Like it's just not what happens. I guess I gotta fucking bring it up because people are gonna be like, what the hell? Here, let's find the Rickard Thorin scene. The Queen's Hand argued. Here we go. Rickard Thorne. Rickard Thorne cut his way through them, abandoning the stolen treasures. He scooped up his son, fled to the stable, stole a horse, 30 leagues. Other men took pursuit of Rickard Thorne. They tumbled on the saddle, and then here's him battling on page 472, 473. King's Landing was far away, and then and they tear him apart here on page 474. And then they even talk about how the news, Rhaenyra wept because news got through the city. And then there was news that Queen Helena was sent his head in a chamber pot, though there's no proof that happened. Okay, so the boy dies, and the news makes it to the city on page 474 and 475. And then I think he said 505. We go all the way. You got to go all the way on like what's going on here. Okay. We have then we have the deal with Lady Caswell and that whole incident, and then we have Kristen Cole at Harrenhal. In fact, I think and then Maiden's Day happens in 130, and I think Kristen Cole. Is this where Kristen Cole dies? 3 arrows falling across the field, striking Kristen Cole in the belly, neck, and breast. I have no songs to sing about you. So after Maelor dies, imagine you're a reader. Maelor dies, news reaches King's Landing. Then Kristen Cole dies. Kristen Cole fucking dies. Then Maiden's Day. And then you have the battle over the God's Eye. And then you have you've got Tumbleton happening, okay? And then you've got fucking what does Tumbleton happen before? Because they go back and forth between like Tumbleton and the battle. Oh, and then we have the Shepherd coming. Okay, and that happens. And then more chaos at Tumbleton. And then we've got Daemon. And then we have the Betrayers dealing with stuff at Tumbleton. And then we have battle over the God's Eye. Okay? And then, finally, in a new chapter, in page 505, George said 505. I think it's actually later. But it's 506. Helena commits suicide. So there's no way, George is just off there. Okay. He's just off. Word of Prince Maelor's death and the grisly manner of his passing is not the thing that drives it's not the thing that triggers Princess Helena to suicide. And her words coming true is also not really a thing, considering that it's Alicent who sent them out. So George off the rails here. Okay, I'm sorry. Sorry. So in Ryan's Outline of season 3, Helena still kills herself for no particular reason. Yeah, because that's what you fucking wrote in the book. Okay? Like, that's what you fucking wrote in the book.
So on some level, he does have access to those scripts. He does have has access to the outline of season 3 and 4.
Yeah. So he gave him an outline. But now here, George is criticizing Ryan for something that Ryan, like, no one should be able to, like, read that and be like, oh, Maelor's death triggered Helena's suicide. Like, there is no fresh horror, no triggering event to overwhelm the fragile young queen. There's no fucking triggering event in Fire and Blood. Like, what is he fucking talking about? Oh, George. Oh, George. Oh, George. And the final butterfly follows soon after. Queen Helena, a sweet and gentle soul, is much beloved by the small folk of King's Landing. Rhaenyra was not. So when rumors began to rise that Helena did not kill herself, but rather was murdered at Helena's command, the commons are quick to believe them. That night, King's Landing rose in a bloody riot. I wrote on page 506 of Fire and Blood, it is the beginning of the end for Rhaenyra's rule over the city, ultimately leading to the storming of the Dragon Pit and the rise of the Shepherd's mob that drives Rhaenyra to flee the city and return to Dragonstone and her death. Maelor by himself.
Whatever happened to Rhaenyra, the Realm's Delight? Whatever happened to that?
Well, that's the thing is, like, I thought you're supposed to read it and not know, like, actually if the public, like, likes Rhaenyra or hates her, and whether things are you know, like the shepherds riot is more about, I'm sure there's some stuff about Rhaenyra being horrible in there, but it's more about him believing that the dragons are demons, you know. But nonetheless, Maelor by himself means little. He's a small child, does not have a line of dialogue, does nothing of consequence but die. But where and when and how, that does matter. Losing Maelor weakened. So here's the thing is, like, now he's claiming that Maelor dying, like, without Maelor dying, Helena doesn't die. George, I mean, kind of weird here that I'm siding so much with Ryan Condal.
Well, you guys are brothers, right? Isn't that the rumor?
Yeah, that's right. We're brothers.
You look like Ryan Condal.
Maelor by himself means little. He is a small child, does not have a line of dialogue, does nothing of consequence but die. But where and when and how, that does matter. Losing Maelor weakened the end of the blood and cheese sequence. I would argue not really. That wasn't the thing that weakened it. But it also cost us Bitterbridge scene with all its horror and heroism. Okay, that's true. But again, they're not going to show a 2-year-old child getting ripped apart. It undercut the motivation for Helena's suicide. No, it didn't. And that in turn sent thousands into streets and alleys screaming for justice for their murdered queen. It's not really how it's, you know. Okay. So none of that is essential, I suppose, but all of it does serve a purpose. It helps to tie the storylines together. So one thing follows another in a logical and convincing manner. Oh, George. What will we offer the fans instead once we've killed these butterflies? I have no idea. I do not recall that Ryan and I ever discussed this back when he first told me they were pushing back on Aegon's second son. Maelor himself is not essential, but if losing him means we lose Bitterbridge, Helena's suicide, and the riots, well, that's a considerable loss. There's no way we're losing the riots or Helena's suicide. Come on.
There's no way we're losing the riots. So much has to happen with the riots, and
but the riots can be. They've already seeded the riots. They've already seeded like the small folks' discontent. And there are larger, more toxic butterflies to come.
That's the most damning line in the whole thing. Not the one thing from earlier. That one right there.
If House of the Dragon goes ahead with some of the changes being contemplated for seasons 3 and 4. Ooh, George R.R.
So this is my issue with his whole Helena thing here. This is where he contradicts himself. So in the previous
Yeah.
blog post, when the first episode came out, he praised the Helena character and how
And her
it's
performance.
better than and her performance, and also he liked the way they did the character. But in order for Helena to be grieving over her son so much, how she is in the books, according to him here, to the point where she commits suicide, it has to be a different character. So which is it? Do you like the show's interpretation, or do you like your original
Yeah.
writing of the character? Mm.
I mean, so there's two things going on here. Like one, like fundamentally George does seem to be unhappy with the show. And that's an interesting thing in and of itself. I think this is more of a symptom of, because the things he's bringing up in this blog post are frankly like, well, some of them, they're minor or wrong. Like, that's what's really weird, right? These are not the things that the fans were complaining about. You know, it's
Well,
like,
here's the thing. Do you think that maybe he's being incredibly nice by bringing up the Maelor thing, even though it technically doesn't really matter that much, as a means
right,
to basically say he's unhappy with some of the change? And if
right,
that's the case,
like a couple arguing about the toilet seat being or down when there's actually a deeper issue that they want to be arguing about. Yeah,
100%. My problem with this blog post is we can argue about whether it's professional or not, whatever. My problem here is I was hoping he would go episode by episode about what he liked and didn't like, right? Having just such a big blog post and about what's going on. My problem here is there's so many things to focus on why House of the Dragon season 2 wasn't good, and this was one of them. This is on the bottom of the list.
oh
There's no
yeah.
mention of Damon stuff or Helena
Well, I
being a
think because he hadn't
character.
gotten to it, maybe he planned on a post on episodes 3 and 4 and a post on episode 5 and
What the
6
fuck
and a
did he
post on
think?
7 to 8.
There's no way this motherfucker who has been in show business for so long didn't think that he was going to get contacted from HBO or House of the Dragon 2.
I don't know what he was thinking, man. This is like,
There's no way. And look, if you were going to go scorched earth because you're sick of not being alerted when they change things, because that's what it sounds like. It sounds like he's
right.
annoyed that he wasn't alerted that they changed certain things, which is fine.
This
If you're
is
gonna go
this is
scorched earth.
this is really weird because he's going scorched earth on the things that HBO is being reasonable about. The things that HBO is not reasonable about, dropping episodes 9 and 10 and all of a sudden making them rewrite scripts. Like, that's not reasonable. That's horrible shit that HBO did. Right? Them saying, "Hey, can we not murder a child on screen?" is fucking reasonable. Them being like, "Up, we're shortening the season in the 11th hour," that's unreasonable. So like, it's like, why hyper fixate on this?
It's like it's what you just said about the fight being about the toilet seat. It's not really about the toilet seat. The one thing I wish he would have done, and I'm sure
Yeah.
you'll agree with this, is that this is something the showrunners themselves and even people who know anything about how production works behind the scenes knows. Because of the writer's strike, they couldn't go back after they were ordered to cut it from 10 to 8. They couldn't go back and rewrite certain things. They had to continue filming to stay on schedule. And
Yeah.
rewrites happen all the time during productions. They couldn't do that. So
Yeah.
therefore, they were stuck with what they had to do. They had to follow HBO's orders to cut it from 10 to 8 because they didn't have the budget. They did that. And I'm sure they thought before the writer's strike came down, they thought it's fine. We'll rewrite some of the later stuff. Let's do what we have. And then
Yeah.
writer's strike happened. They couldn't rewrite the later stuff. And that's what we got stuck with.
What's so weird is he really thinks that the fans love his story beats versus like his writing and his atmosphere and his themes and things like that. Like, he really thinks, like, I haven't met any fans that were like, "Oh my God." Like, I met some fans that like commented on the loss of Maelor, but I don't know any that were upset, unlike, say, the loss of Nettles, or,
Oh, God, yeah. Oh, shit, yeah.
because Nettles is a great character and has thematic importance and is great. While Maelor, honestly, it's a fucking random scene. Like, oh God, Maelor's gone. We don't get to see a baby ripped apart on a bridge. Like, that's really the only thing that's lost there. And
That's actually hold on. That's actually a good fucking point because you would think George of all people would be commenting on the Nettles situation, but I don't think
right,
I've heard
that's why I think
anything
this is
about
chronological. That he was gonna do later kind of stuff. Though I admit that this last line is very summarizing.
Well, if Helena's going to kill herself in season 3, then they're moving along way faster than I anticipated. I expected her to do that in season 4, which would have been like the perfect drop off to the riots happening and the storming of the dragon pit.
Yeah, yeah.
But season 3 sounds like it's a little too early.
I mean, I guess I mean, we talked about this before when we thought the series was going to be 3 seasons. We thought season 1 prologue, season 2 ends with Rhaenyra taking King's Landing, season 3 ends with the end of the war, right? And so we kind of thought that Rhaenyra taking King's Landing was going to be a good stopping point. And then, you know, they shortened seasons, and we were like, okay, maybe Battle of the Gullet, because then you've got, you know, Jason Luke dying, being paralleled, and then that doesn't happen, and so now, how are they going to fit it in? I mean, you've got to have Gullet and then taking of King's Landing. So it's like Rhaenyra takes it mid-season.
You got to have the first episode of season 3 has to be Rhaenyra taking King's Landing, and then shortly after Gullet, then where do you put Two Betrayers? Where do you put where do you put all this stuff? And if you have Helena die in season 3, shortly after she dies, you have to have Storming of the Dragon Pit, unless you're removing Storming of the Dragon Pit for that reason.
I mean, you're putting it all in. I imagine like Rhaenyra takes King's Landing, and then you could have Helena commit suicide while Rhaenyra takes King's Landing, and then or the next episode, and then have you want some time with Rhaenyra in the in the queen position. So maybe you let her be queen for a while, and then you have Helena commit suicide, and then Storming of the Dragon Pit. But the thing is how are you going to get Helena to commit suicide? Well, I think you and I both know how they're going to get Helena to commit suicide.
Someone kills her?
Daggers and prophecies, bitches. She's gonna kill herself because she foresaw herself die.
Well, yeah. Right. This is something Dragon Demands actually brought to me, which I thought was an interesting idea, because he always thought Larys had Helena killed in the books. So,
yeah,
I mean, to kick off the riots in season 3, I guess that could be a thing as well.
Well, who knew that his theory was wrong? Who knew it was actually an event that happened 40 pages earlier? And months before. Who knew it was that? George reveals it here. Fucking.
There's so much stuff that needs to happen in season 3 that didn't get a chance to happen in season 2.
Oh my god!
It's gonna be like literally, if
it would be all battles, because you've got to do Gullet. You've got to do. They could combine Battle at the Lakeshore with Butcher's Ball, I suppose, but then you have to have, you've got to have Rhaenyra takes King's Landing. You have to have Helena. I don't know. Do you even? Maybe you can push Helena's suicide. Maybe you could end the season on Helena's suicide. I don't know, and then begin the season 4 on the riots.
It almost sounds like a good chunk of season 4, if it has 8 to 10 episodes, is going to focus on Aegon III and the Council of Regents and all that stuff. I wonder if they're going to do that because, again, after Helena, like George said here, after Helena dies, Rhaenyra's rule isn't that long.
Yeah. So this is what I find a really, really interesting though, because George did not criticize Game of Thrones very much, if ever. And I mean, he kind of mentioned that he fought against the removal of different characters. Like he fought against the removal of Lady Stoneheart. He fought against the removal of Jane Poole, and things like this. But for the most part, he didn't complain, which makes me wonder if D&D really focused on story beats, and they included they were like, we need to include every story beat from the outline that George R. R. Martin approved. And which is why those later seasons of Game of Thrones kind of feel like checklists. Like nothing happens and then checklist. John R plus L equals J. Checklist, Shireen is burned. Checklist, hold the door. You know, these events that don't really have much bearing on the plot, like hold the door, doesn't have much bearing on the plot at all. R plus L equals J has no bearing on the plot other than Varys dying. Shireen burning doesn't really have any bearing on the plot. Like these things, like they're just checklists from that, like George had on some sort of approved outline. And here, you know, he's saying, oh, you guys had an outline and then you changed your outline and you're not following like, you know, the checklist. Though he's kind of contradicting himself here because he says, oh, he approved it and it didn't seem that bad. But then he's like, more toxic butterflies are coming with seasons 3 and 4 by changes being contemplated. Like
This is why I'm thinking they agreed on something and then they changed it behind his back and he got very upset.
And then he heard about it secondhand. Like somebody
that.
Like he has a leaker. I mean, probably like T. Mickle would be his leaker. I mean, that go without saying it would be T. Mickle. But I could see.
And this is why the blog post is so frustrating. Just fucking say that, homie. Just say that's what's getting you. That's what's getting your panties riled up. That they made these. You guys had an agreement, and they made changes behind your back without your agreement.
So this is the conspiracy theory that we have now. Okay, I got it. George not only watched the season and didn't really like things, but then T. Mickle in the writer's room heard some stuff and was like, oh my God, they're really fucking changing things for seasons 3 and 4, or there's talk. She goes and tells George. George panics, doesn't know what to do. And so he like does this blog post to try to stop it.
I'll take it. Fuck it. I'll take it.
I don't think the world is that exciting, but you know, like it's something like that, right?
Probably. I just
when I say T. Mickle used to be his writing assistant for a number of years before she joined the House of the Dragon writers team. So if there's one person on that writers team that is George's friend, it's T. Mickle.
Of course. Yeah. And I just found it atrocious that no comment on how they bend over backwards to make Rhaenyra and Alicent have their hands clean of any of the horrible shit they do in the books.
Does he not have a problem with that?
He didn't mention it. I wish he would have mentioned some of the changes, especially in episode 8. No change.
Well, again, he's only talking about episodes 1 and 2. You know, so I like maybe had he gotten later on, like them, you know. But it's just like I say, like. He's doing the first half of the season was pretty good. And for him to have these minor criticisms on episodes 1 and 2, which are on a whole better than most of the season, episode 2 being what I would call the best episode of House of the Dragon, period. I would say episode 2
100%. Yeah.
100%. And he just has some minor criticisms on like cutting Maelor and like what it might do. Like had he gone further, he would have had to have, because it's the latter half of the season that everything falls apart, and it's episode 8 where things really fucking fall apart, where all the wheels fall off the clown car. So he did not think that this was going to be it. He was going to talk more.
But there's no way. There's no way he didn't think he'd get contacted for this. There's no shot.
I don't know, man. He's a crazy old man now.
He's a crazy old man now? Really? He's not that crazy.
I'm just saying, man. I mean, you know, he's old man yelling at the clouds. But
speaking of which, you mentioned earlier HBO and their response. Do you want me to set that up?
Yeah.
So, do you want to go to my Twitter because I put it there, or do you want to go to the original?
Hold on a second. No, I'll go to your Twitter. Here it is.
So I'll read it off. So of course HBO responded because this account called Streamer reached out to them, and this is what HBO spokesperson had to say. There are few greater fans of George R. R. Martin and his book Fire and Blood than the creative team on House of the Dragon, both in the production and at HBO. Commonly, when adapting a book for the screen with its own format and limitations, the showrunner ultimately is required to make difficult choices about the characters and stories the audience will follow. We believe that Ryan Condal and his team have done an extraordinary job, and the millions of fans the series has amassed over the first 2 seasons will continue to enjoy it. Honestly, bravo for them if this is their official statement,
Yeah,
because this is them standing behind their writers, and you want your company to stand right behind you on this stuff. So good on
absolutely.
them for doing that.
Yeah, I mean, it's George doesn't write about keeping Laenor alive and dragon bonds. He doesn't write about dragons busting through floors. He doesn't write about beating people to death at weddings with no consequences. He doesn't write about God mode Daemon. He doesn't write about like the weird murder of Rhea Royce, but he writes about Maelor missing and thinking that Maelor missing is the thing that made Blood and Cheese off, and proceeds to I don't know, create a huge scandal here largely because he deleted the post. Had they not made him delete the post? Because I'm sure it's
Doesn't matter.
yeah,
This is something I want to highlight. Something someone in that thread said. Wes, he goes, HBO are making this worse than it really is.
absolutely,
Once on the web, these things have a short life. Never breathe life back into it. I want to bring your attention to something Woody Harrelson did. He did a very, very bad AMA on Reddit, and it was like really, truly, truly bad. And after he ended it, he never really talked about it. And it was on the internet for maybe a couple hours, and everybody forgot. But this one guy, Alan, comes in and says, not at all. They absolutely need to declare loudly and clearly that they have confidence in their writers. Yeah, that's also true. Because if you don't stand behind your writers, then you're really not standing behind your product. And if you're not standing behind
right.
your product, why should I come back for season 3?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So
And this is what George, that final line where he's like, season 3 and 4, what are they contemplating? The thing is, it's like, the problem isn't whether they keep to George's story beats or not. That's where George is off. It's not about the story beats. It's about themes and writing and things like this that are more important. Character motivation, linking episodes to episodes in a cohesive manner. It's just so, this whole thing is just so weird because I think a lot of people are like so happy that George is being critical of HBO, but he's being critical of HBO for the wrong reasons. Like this was something where I'm like, I can totally see this specifically is something I can totally see Ryan Condal and HBO's side on. There's a lot of fucking other stuff that I can't. So it's really weird. This is a weird hill to die on. Man, so odd. This is so odd.
I find it so funny how
This is a fucking crazy scandal rocking the Ice and Fire community right now.
is
Like,
it really a scandal though? It's more like a
oh,
is it a scandal?
it's we'll see. We're gonna add to it. We're adding fuel to the fire by making these videos. But yeah,
What's funny is someone in my comment section called you and me drama queens who focus on drama stories. No, this is in the news. This is relating to the
yeah.
creator of the series we cover. We have to cover
I
this.
think it's also because this also then affects his mood and Winds of Winter and all sorts of things, and the production of the show and what's going to be on the show going forward and George's role and stuff like that. All that's going to be affected by this. This is going to be some weird shit.
Well, George
But
said earlier that he's not involved in the season 3 writing room. So if you want these changes to stick that you want, you got to be more involved, which means putting Winds of Winter on the back burner and making sure they do it correctly.
yeah, or putting Winds of Winter on the back burner and House of the Dragon on the back burner and focusing on Dunk and Egg and your cinema and producing a half dozen movies of the writings of Howard Waldrop and like all the other all the other projects that he has going on.
But would you say was very unprofessional?
Yeah, this is you don't air your laundry. You don't air your dirty laundry publicly, man. Like that's just, I understand that like some people don't have like real office jobs, but you don't do this shit. Like, you know, if I have a problem with Tammy from HR, I'm not fucking tweeting about it. Like, you just don't fucking do that. Don't ever do that. You know, you do like everybody else. You go to happy hour, you bitch about it with your coworkers, you know, that's it. Like, don't fucking mega horn it to the world. You're George R.R. Martin, man.
I wonder if this is a situation where they could lose money off this. Like, will people not turn out for season 3 because of his grievances here?
Right, but it's also weird that he did delete it. Like, I mean, maybe he had regrets over hurting Ryan Condal's feelings, or maybe it was a money thing. But it's odd that like a man with so much power is scared and has to delete a post. You know,
it's also possible. I know you don't go on. I know you don't post often on social media. I know this very well, and so does your audience. But it's also possible he posted it, he got it off his chest, he went back, he reread it, and he's like, you know what? I'm okay. Then he tried deleting it, accidentally deleted the website for 5 seconds, deleted it,
right,
took it offline, deleted it, and
yeah. But then HBO felt the need to respond. So, like, you know, if HBO was like, we don't know what you're talking about. But yeah. Oh, well, we'll probably see him make a comment about him commenting, like some sort of apology, probably later on.
If he was smart to put it all under the rug, release another sample chapter. If he was smart.
Oh my God, you're right, dude. If he released another sample chapter,
like a Cersei or a Jaime, holy shit!
Oh my God, like everyone would just forget about what was going. This
all forgiven, asshole.
All forgiven. Anyway, Carmine, thank you for talking with me about this scandal, big scandal.
Something tells me we're gonna continue talking about this well into the week because
I think it'll probably come up. It'll probably come up on Sunday. Yeah. I'm sorry that, by the way, do you think it's funny that I like George is being super anal and then I over analed him?
This is overanalyzing George's blog post.
I know, right? Overanalyzing George's blog post. So it's like, wait, what? What are you talking about? What did that trigger her suicide? Oh God. All right. I will talk to you soon, Carmine. Thank you again.
Thank you.